Be me, Donna. 34, human resources manager. Climbed the ladder for years, watching nonsense go down. Now I'm the one making the calls. Time to clean house of the dinosaurs who think it's still 1955. Implementing policies that aren't stuck in the Stone Age. Today starts like any other day until I see the email. David from engineering wants to meet about family leave options. Roll my eyes so hard they almost fall out. Another entitled man thinking he deserves special treatment. Probably wants time off to go golfing while his wife does all the real work. Schedule him for 2 p.m, give myself time to prepare my talking points. David walks into my office looking nervous. Good. He should be. Starts explaining how his wife just had their first baby. Wants to take parental leave to bond and help with care. I can barely contain my laughter. This is exactly the kind of performative nonsense that undermines real progress. David, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but let's be realistic here. Your wife is the one who actually carried the baby. She's the one who needs recovery time. What exactly do you think you're going to contribute that she can't do better? Watch his face change from hopeful to confused. Perfect opening to educate him. Look, I know society tells men they need to be involved parents now, but there are biological realities we can't ignore. Women are naturally equipped for this. It's literally what our bodies are designed for. The best thing you can do is focus on your career and provide financial stability. Lean back in my chair, satisfied with my explanation. David shifts uncomfortably. Donna, I just want to spend time with my son and support my wife during recovery. I've looked at the employee handbook and it says parental leave is available to all parents. Internally, groan at his persistence. The handbook uses inclusive language for legal reasons, David, but the intent is clear. What do you mean the intent is? Clear? His voice has an edge now. Typical male aggression when they don't get their way. I mean that these policies were fought for by women who actually needed them. Co-opting resources meant for new mothers is honestly pretty problematic. Use my most patient tone, like I'm explaining to a child. David's jaw tightens. Problematic? I want to care for my newborn child. How is that problematic? Time to really drive the point home. Because David, when men take these leaves, it perpetuates the myth that childcare is equally the father's responsibility. This undermines women who are trying to advance their careers despite biological disadvantages. Watch him process this. Clearly never thought about the bigger picture. So by taking leave to care for my own child, I'm somehow hurting women? Not emphatically. Exactly. You're taking away opportunities from women who genuinely need them. Plus, let's be honest, how much help are you really going to be? Changing a diaper here and there? David stands up abruptly. I need to think about this. Shows him out with a sympathetic smile. Another crisis averted. Send myself a calendar reminder to document this conversation. Need to track these attempts at policy abuse. 3 days later, David emails requesting a formal review of his leave application. Attaches some employee handbook sections and company policy documents. Clearly been doing research instead of accepting reality. Schedule another meeting to shut this down properly. Time to bring out the bigger arguments. David arrives with a folder full of papers. Immediately launches into legal citations. Donna, the Family and Medical Leave Act specifically states that eligible employees of either gender can take leave for bonding with a new child. Wave dismissively. David, you're missing the forest for the trees here. What forest? This is federal law. His voice is getting louder. Need to de-escalate before he becomes disruptive. The law exists because lawmakers don't understand the nuanced realities of modern workplace dynamics. Just because something is technically legal doesn't make it right or beneficial. David slams the folder on my desk. So you're saying you know better than federal employment law? Stay calm, maintain professional demeanor. I'm saying I understand the historical context and social implications that lawmakers often miss. These laws were written primarily by men who don't grasp the complexities of maternal needs. Maternal needs? What about paternal needs? What about my need to bond with my son? Shake my head sadly. David, society has conditioned you to think you have the same biological imperatives as women. But the science is clear. Mothers have hormonal changes that create natural bonding mechanisms. Fathers simply don't have the same neurochemical responses. Watch David's face turn red. That's complete nonsense and you know it. Are you seriously suggesting men can't bond with their children? Lean forward. Use my most understanding tone. Of course, fathers can develop emotional connections over time. But the immediate postpartum period is specifically designed by evolution for mother-child bonding. David starts pulling out more papers. Here's the company's diversity and inclusion statement. It specifically mentions supporting all employees regardless of gender. Here's the CEO's memo from last year about progressive parental leave policies. Glance at the documents without really reading them. David, you're cherry-picking policies without understanding their broader context. Yes, we support all employees, but that doesn't mean identical treatment regardless of biological differences. The CEO's memo was about ensuring women aren't penalized for taking necessary recovery time. Tap pen thoughtfully on desk. You taking leave actually undermines that goal. How does me spending time with my family undermine women? His voice is getting dangerously loud. Because it normalizes the expectation that men should sacrifice career advancement for childcare. This creates pressure on women to prove they're equally dedicated by not taking their full leave. You're essentially creating a race to the bottom. David stares at me like I've grown a second head. That makes no sense whatsoever. If anything, men taking leave normalizes parenting as a shared responsibility. Shake my head patiently. That's exactly the kind of surface-level thinking that perpetuates systemic inequality. Surface-level thinking? I have a law degree, Donna. Internally roll eyes, typical male credential dropping. Academic credentials don't necessarily translate to understanding lived experiences. Have you ever been a new mother? Have you experienced postpartum recovery? Then maybe listen to someone who understands these issues more deeply. David's hands are shaking now. So because I'm a man, my perspective is automatically invalid? Not invalid, just limited by your positionality in patriarchal structures. You literally benefit from systems that prioritize male career advancement. Taking parental leave is just another way to have your cake and eat it too. Having my cake and eat it too? I want to take unpaid leave to change diapers and lose sleep. Laugh at the absurdity. David, you'll get all the credit for being a hands-on dad while your wife does the real emotional labor. Meanwhile, you'll return to work as the hero who helped out with his own child. It's performative allyship at its most transparent. David stands up so fast his chair rolls back. I can't believe what I'm hearing. You're denying me legally protected leave because of your personal ideology. Time to assert authority. I'm protecting this company from liability and ensuring our policies serve their intended purposes. Intended purposes? Show me where it says parental leave is only for women. David is practically shouting now. Lean back. Speak more softly to highlight his aggression. David, I need you to lower your voice. This kind of hostile behavior when you don't get your way is exactly why these conversations are difficult. Hostile? I'm advocating for my legal rights as an employee and parent. And you're denying them based on pseudoscientific gender essentialist arguments. Feel a flutter of uncertainty. His legal language is more sophisticated than expected. David, let's take a step back and consider the practical implications. The practical implications are that I want to spend time with my newborn son. And you're preventing that because you think men are biologically incapable of childcare. Try a different approach. That's not what I said. I'm talking about optimizing limited resources. If both parents take extended leave, it creates coverage issues and sets unrealistic precedents. David pulls out his phone, starts reading directly from the screen. According to the Employee Handbook, Section 4.7, quote, all eligible employees may take up to 12 weeks of unpaid parental leave following the birth or adoption of a child. Section 4.8, leave may be taken by either parent and is not subject to approval based on gender, role, or perceived necessity. Feel heat rising in my cheeks. Haven't actually read the handbook in detail recently. David, policy language and practical application aren't always identical. As Human Resources Manager, I have discretion in interpreting how policies serve the company's best interests. And I'm telling you that approving your leave request would set a problematic precedent. Problematic for whom? You keep saying that, but you can't explain how. David is leaning over my desk now. How does me caring for my child harm anyone? Need to regain control of this conversation. It harms women by diluting resources specifically designed to address historical inequities. What resources? It's unpaid leave. David's voice cracks with frustration. I'm not asking for money or benefits. I'm asking for permission to not work so I can care for my family. Realize I may have misstated something. Well, there are administrative costs and coverage considerations. Administrative costs? It's paperwork, Donna. And you're literally paid to do paperwork. As for coverage, that's a management issue, not a policy issue. David is making points I'm struggling to counter. Time to redirect to bigger picture concerns. David, you're focusing on technicalities instead of understanding the social context. When men take parental leave, it reinforces gender stereotypes about shared domestic responsibilities. This actually hurts women by suggesting they should be grateful for basic participation from fathers. Feel proud of this argument, it's more sophisticated. David laughs bitterly. So your position is that men being involved parents is bad for gender equality? That's the most backward logic I've ever heard. You're literally arguing that fathers caring for children reinforces patriarchy. Wave hand dismissively. You're oversimplifying complex sociological dynamics. No, I'm pointing out that your arguments are internally contradictory. You can't simultaneously claim to support gender equality while denying equal parental rights. That's not complex sociology, that's basic hypocrisy. David's words sting more than expected, but he's clearly not understanding the nuanced perspective. David, I think we need to end this conversation. You're obviously too emotionally invested to have a productive discussion. I'll document your request and provide a formal response within 48 hours. Stand up to signal the meeting is over. David doesn't move. Emotionally invested in wanting to care for my newborn son? Yes, that's exactly the kind of emotional investment that clouds judgment. Your personal desires are preventing you from seeing the broader implications. David stares at me for a long moment. You realize you're describing basic human attachment as a character flaw, right? I'm describing how personal bias can interfere with policy understanding. Check my watch pointedly. I have another meeting in 5 minutes. David finally starts gathering his papers. This isn't over, Donna. I'm going to file a formal appeal. Watch him leave. Immediately start drafting documentation of the conversation. Emphasize his aggressive behavior and unreasonable demands. Need to build a paper trail in case this escalates. Send email to my supervisor highlighting David's hostile attitude. Frame this as a potential workplace safety concern. 2 weeks later, David submits a formal written appeal. Includes citations of company policy, federal law, and state regulations. Also includes documentation of our conversations with direct quotes. Some of these quotes make me sound worse than I intended, especially the part about men being biologically unsuited for childcare. Schedule appeal hearing with senior management present. Prepare detailed presentation about the legal and practical risks of approving David's request. Focus on how setting this precedent could lead to abuse of parental leave policies. Emphasize the administrative burden and potential for discrimination claims from women. Day of hearing arrives. David brings a folder 3 times thicker than last time. Also brings a notebook and what looks like a recording device. Inform him that recording is not permitted per company policy. He switches it off, but keeps the notebook. Start my presentation confidently. David's request, while understandable on a personal level, represents a fundamental misunderstanding of our parental leave policies. These policies were designed specifically to address the unique needs of new mothers. Extending them to fathers dilutes their effectiveness and creates unnecessary administrative complexity. Senior management nods along. Feel good about the reception. Furthermore, approving this request sets a precedent that could lead to significant operational disruptions. If every new father demands extended leave, we'll face serious coverage issues. Our policies must serve the company's broader interests, not individual preferences. David raises his hand. Vice President of Operations signals him to proceed. Donna, can you point me to the specific policy language that restricts parental leave to mothers only? Flip through my notes. Realize I don't have that specific citation. David, as I've explained, policy interpretation involves understanding intent and context. The intent of these policies is clearly to support new mothers during recovery and bonding. While the language may be gender neutral for legal compliance, the practical application should reflect biological realities. David opens his folder. So you're saying the written policy doesn't actually mean what it says? That's correct. Written policies often use broad language to avoid legal challenges. But implementation requires practical judgment about appropriate use. Vice President of Operations looks confused. Donna, can you clarify what you mean by that? Feel a moment of uncertainty. I mean that human resources professionals must interpret policies in ways that serve their intended purposes. Just because something is technically allowable doesn't mean it should be automatically approved. We have to consider broader implications and potential for abuse. David stands up. With respect, Donna has been making arguments based on her personal beliefs about gender roles, not company policy. She's told me repeatedly that men are biologically unsuited for childcare. She's argued that fathers bonding with children somehow hurts women. None of these arguments appear anywhere in our written policies. Vice President looks at me expectantly. Donna, is that an accurate characterization of your position? Feel defensive. David is oversimplifying complex conversations about workplace equity and resource allocation. My position is based on research about optimal policy implementation and gender dynamics. David pulls out a document. I'd like to read from the company's diversity and inclusion statement, approved by this same senior management team. Quote, "We are committed to creating an inclusive workplace where all employees can thrive, regardless of gender, and where traditional assumptions about family roles do not limit career opportunities." End quote. Room is getting uncomfortably quiet. David, that statement supports my position. Traditional assumptions about family roles shouldn't limit women's career opportunities. When men take parental leave, it reinforces those traditional assumptions. Realize immediately that this logic doesn't quite work. David pounces on the contradiction. So your interpretation is that supporting male employees' parental rights somehow limits women's career opportunities? Can you explain the specific mechanism by which that works? Scramble for a coherent explanation. When resources designed for women are redirected to men, it creates a zero-sum competition. What resources? You keep mentioning resources, but this is unpaid leave. The only resource involved is administrative processing, which is your job. Are you saying that doing your job for male employees somehow disadvantages female employees? David's questions are becoming harder to answer coherently. Vice President interrupts. Donna, I'm confused about your reference to research on optimal policy implementation. Can you provide specific citations for this research? Feel heat rising in my face. The research is widely available in human resources and organizational psychology literature. I'd like specific citations, please. Flip through my notes frantically. I don't have the exact citations with me, but the principles are well established in the field. David smirks. Perhaps because that research doesn't exist. Feel anger flaring. David, your confrontational attitude throughout this process has been unprofessional. This kind of aggressive pushback when policies are explained to you is exactly why these conversations are difficult. Vice President looks surprised. Donna, David's questions seem reasonable to me. He's been hostile and argumentative from the beginning. He's questioned my professional judgment and expertise repeatedly. This isn't how these discussions should proceed. David maintains calm tone. I've asked for clarification of policies and the reasoning behind decisions. If that's considered hostile, then perhaps the decisions themselves are problematic. Chief Financial Officer, who's been quiet until now, speaks up. Donna, I've reviewed our parental leave costs from last year. The total administrative cost per leave application is approximately $47. Can you explain how this represents a significant resource allocation concern? Feel the room shifting against me. It's not just the direct costs, it's the precedent and operational impact. What operational impact specifically? Chief Financial Officer is looking at me intently. Coverage issues, productivity disruptions, potential for abuse of policies. If we approve David's request, every new father will expect the same treatment. Realize this sounds like I'm making policy based on hypothetical future problems. David interjects. So the concern is that other employees might also want to exercise their legal rights? That seems like an argument for better planning, not policy restrictions. Vice President nods. David has a point. If our policies allow parental leave, we should plan accordingly. Feel control of the situation slipping away. The policies allow leave at management discretion for operational needs. I've determined that approving David's leave would create operational difficulties. David immediately pulls out another document. Actually, that's incorrect. Section 4.9 of the Employee Handbook states that parental leave requests cannot be denied except in cases where the employee is not eligible under FMLA guidelines. David meets all eligibility requirements. He's been employed for over 12 months, works more than 1,250 hours annually, and our company has over 50 employees. There's no discretionary authority mentioned for operational concerns. Flip through my own copy of the handbook frantically. Haven't actually read these sections carefully in months. Find section 4.9. David is completely correct. Policy language is much more restrictive than I remembered. Well, there are always operational considerations that override written policies. Vice President looks skeptical. Donna, are you saying we should ignore our own written policies? Not ignore them, but interpret them in context of business needs. Realize I'm making this worse. Written policies can't account for every specific situation. David leans forward. What specific operational need is threatened by my leave request? I'm asking for 12 weeks of unpaid leave starting in 2 weeks. My current projects can be reassigned or delayed. My manager has confirmed that coverage is manageable. What specific operational need overrides my legal right to parental leave? Can't think of a specific answer. There are always cascading effects that aren't immediately obvious. Workflow disruptions, client relationship impacts, team morale issues. David pulls out yet another document. I spoke with my manager about operational impact. Here's his written statement that my leave request poses no significant operational challenges. Room is completely silent. Everyone is looking at me expectantly. Realize I have no substantive operational argument. Only ideological objections that I can't articulate without sounding discriminatory. I still believe this sets a problematic precedent. Chief Executive Officer, who hasn't spoken yet, finally weighs in. Donna, what precedent exactly? That we follow our own policies? That we comply with federal employment law? That we treat all employees equally, regardless of gender? Feel my face burning. The precedent that these policies can be used outside their intended scope. And what was the intended scope? Chief Executive Officer's voice has an edge now. To support new mothers during recovery and bonding. Based on what? David has shown us policy language that clearly applies to all parents. Are you saying we should ignore the plain language of our own policies? Feel cornered. I'm saying that practical implementation requires judgment about appropriate use. David speaks up again. Appropriate according to whom? The federal government says I'm entitled to this leave. Company policy says I'm entitled to this leave. My manager says, granting the leave poses no operational problems. On what basis are you determining that my use is inappropriate? Long pause while I try to formulate an answer. Realize that every argument I want to make sounds discriminatory, based on my professional judgment about resource allocation and policy optimization. Chief Executive Officer stands up. Donna, I think we need to take a 15-minute recess. During recess, senior management huddles without me. Can hear urgent whispering but can't make out words. David sits quietly reviewing his documents. Feel growing sense of dread. This isn't going the way I expected at all. When we reconvene, Chief Executive Officer speaks first. Donna, after reviewing David's materials and discussing the situation, we have significant concerns. It appears that David's leave request should have been approved immediately under existing policy. Can you explain why it wasn't? Try one more time. Because I believed it represented an inappropriate use of policies designed for different circumstances. Different circumstances? You mean circumstances involving women? Yes, policies designed to address the unique needs of new mothers. Chief Executive Officer looks at Vice President, then back at me. Donna, that's gender discrimination. Feel my stomach drop. No, it's practical policy implementation based on biological realities. Donna, denying benefits to employees based on their gender is the definition of discrimination. Even if you believe your reasoning is sound, the law doesn't allow for that kind of differential treatment. Look around the room desperately. No one is meeting my eyes except David. David speaks calmly. I'd like to file a formal discrimination complaint. Feel the blood drain from my face. David, I think we're all overreacting here. This has been a misunderstanding about policy interpretation. Nothing more than a good faith disagreement about implementation. Good faith. David's voice is sharp now. You've spent weeks telling me that men are biologically unsuited for childcare. You've argued that fathers bonding with children hurts women. You've denied legally protected leave based explicitly on my gender. How is any of that good faith? Chief Executive Officer interrupts. Donna, David is absolutely right to file a complaint. In fact, given what we've heard today, I think we need to conduct a broader review of your decisions as Human Resources Manager. Have there been other instances where you've applied policies differently based on gender? Panic setting in. I've always tried to make decisions that support women in the workplace. That's admirable, but not at the expense of discriminating against men. Equality means equal treatment, not preferential treatment. Feel tears starting to form. I was trying to protect policies that women fought hard to establish. David stands up. By denying them to men, you're not protecting anything. You're undermining the principle of equal treatment that makes those policies legally defensible. If parental leave is only for women, then it's discriminatory against men. If it's for all parents, then it has to be available to all parents. Chief Executive Officer nods grimly. David, we're going to approve your leave request immediately. Donna, we're going to need to review all of your human resources decisions from the past year. And we'll need to involve legal counsel to assess our liability exposure. Feel my career crumbling in real time. 3 weeks later, sitting in a conference room with company lawyers and an outside investigator. They've found 17 instances where I made decisions that favored women over men, denied flexible work arrangements to fathers while approving them for mothers, approved longer bereavement leave for women than men, consistently rated female employees higher in performance reviews despite similar metrics. Investigator reads from her report. The pattern of decision-making demonstrates clear bias based on gender. Ms. Donna consistently interpreted policies in ways that benefited female employees while disadvantaging male employees. This represents systematic discrimination that exposes the company to significant legal liability. Company lawyer explains the situation. David's complaint has been substantiated. He's retained outside counsel and is seeking damages for discrimination. His attorney has indicated they're prepared to file a federal lawsuit if we don't reach a settlement. They're asking for $250,000 in compensatory damages. Feels sick. $250,000 for a 12-week leave request? No, for systematic gender discrimination and violation of his civil rights. The leave denial is just the most recent example of a pattern of discriminatory behavior. Realize they've been building a case against me for weeks. Chief Executive Officer delivers the final blow. Donna, we're accepting your resignation effective immediately. We're also going to settle David's complaint for the full amount he's requesting. Our legal team believes that's far less than we'd pay in a prolonged court battle. Try to speak, but no words come out. Furthermore, given the seriousness of these findings, we're required to report this to relevant professional organizations. This will likely impact your ability to work in human resources in the future. Find my voice, finally. You're ending my career over trying to support women in the workplace? Investigator responds coolly. You're ending your own career by discriminating against employees based on their gender. Supporting women doesn't require harming men. Equality is not a zero-sum game. David's voice cuts through the room. Actually, it is a zero-sum game when you make it one. Turn to see David sitting in the corner with his attorney. Hadn't noticed them come in. David, I was trying to protect policies that benefit working mothers by violating my civil rights and the civil rights of other male employees. You didn't protect anything. You perverted policies meant to ensure equality into tools of discrimination. His attorney speaks up. Ms. Donna, my client has provided evidence of your discriminatory pattern to the EEOC. They're opening their own investigation into company practices under your leadership. This case is going to be a matter of public record. Feel dizzy. Public record? Employment discrimination settlements are typically confidential, but EEOC findings are public. Your name and actions will be associated with this case permanently. Any future employer who conducts a basic background check will find this information. Realize my career in human resources is completely over. David stands up. Donna, you had every opportunity to simply approve my legally protected leave. Instead, you chose to lecture me about gender roles and biological determinism. You made this personal when it should have been procedural. Now you're facing the consequences of that choice. Try one last appeal. David, I genuinely believed I was doing the right thing for gender equality. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. You discriminated against me because I'm a man. That's not gender equality, that's gender bias. And now, everyone is going to know about it. Company lawyer hands me severance papers. Ms. Donna, these documents include a non-disclosure agreement. You're prohibited from discussing this case or disparaging the company or any employees. Violation of this agreement will result in additional legal action. Sign the papers with shaking hands. As I'm packing my office, colleagues avoid eye contact. News of my termination has spread quickly. Can hear whispered conversations about discrimination and lawsuits. Realize my reputation is already destroyed. This story will follow me for the rest of my career. 6 months later, still unemployed. Every human resources position I apply for requires background checks. EEOC report comes up immediately. Had 3 interviews where they asked direct questions about the discrimination findings. Couldn't explain my actions without sounding either incompetent or biased. Neither option leads to job offers. See David at a coffee shop near my apartment. He's with his wife and baby. They look happy and relaxed. He took his full 12 weeks of leave, bonded with his son, returned to work with a promotion and public recognition for his advocacy. While I'm facing permanent career destruction, consider approaching him. Maybe apologizing might help somehow. He sees me and nods politely, but doesn't smile. His wife follows his gaze and her expression hardens, clearly knows who I am and what I did. They leave quickly without speaking. Realize I destroyed my own career by trying to enforce my personal beliefs about gender roles. Thought I was protecting women's rights. Instead, I violated men's rights and undermined the principles I claim to support. David was right about everything. Equality means equal treatment, not preferential treatment based on gender. Now facing permanent professional exile. Six-figure settlement that will be talked about in human resources circles for years. Public record of discrimination that follows me everywhere. All because I couldn't accept that fathers have the same parental rights as mothers.